Welcome to this Q&A session for the film Lady Time, which is part of the 31st edition of Nordisk Panorama Film Festival. The film is nominated for Best Nordic Documentary, but it also has a chance to win the Audience Award, so please remember to vote when this session is done. My name is Cecilia Lidin, and I have the pleasure of hosting this Q&A with Elina Talvensaari, who is the director of Lady Time. Welcome, Elina, and thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
When I was watching your wonderful and touching film, Elina, I kept on thinking about a quote that the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard was famous for saying, and it goes something like, let me think if I can say it right, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And I kept on thinking, well, in some way, it was like you had the privilege of understanding Circa Lisa's life backwards and maybe using it in your own life forwards. But when that is said, maybe you could start by explaining a bit to us, because it seems like a very practical situation. I mean, inheriting a lot of stuff was owned by somebody you didn't even know, and then turning it into this emotional journey. When was it clear to you that this would be a film? When in the process was this a film?
I'm not sure when it was totally clear, but like the first moments we stepped in the apartment, I was like, oh, I should really film this. I should film everything. But at the time I couldn't. We had so many things to do and it wasn't possible. So I kept thinking about it, and I was doing a lot of research, but not so much for the film. It was more like for myself, because I was kind of a little obsessed with the person of the apartment. And it wasn't always that nice. It was like living with a ghost or something, because her things and her smells and her everything was in our home. And it was like, oh, we are living with somebody I don't even know who she is. And then I started thinking that I would make a really short film about it, like 5 minutes, something about her things and guessing who she was. But then I did so much research and I found out so many things that in the end it just, grew and grew. And it was maybe like 3 years after we moved in that I actually decided, okay, I'm going to start writing this script for this film.
One of the words I must admit I wrote in my notes was obsession. Because you can feel it. It's an obsession. But it's interesting to hear that you, as a filmmaker, the first thing you think about is, I must film this. But then I'm thinking the next step you're taking is maybe something that's not as clear for you as a filmmaker, but almost becoming a detective. I mean, how did you structure that work? I mean, how did you get about that?
I kind of did it for myself. I just really wanted to know, and it was really rewarding to find out anything, because first I didn't even know her name, and I didn't know, like, we had a pile of photos and I didn't know who she was in the photos. I knew nothing. So every time I could find out some little piece, I was like, oh, now I know more. It was really like playing this detective game, and I really enjoyed it. And also because in the beginning, everything was so filled with death and everything, I was only thinking about this person who's dying alone and nobody's going to remember her. And then finding out about her really made it all easier, and kind of, it helped me to live with the idea that people die and they might even die alone, and all these subjects of the film.
But she had been alive, and it was her life.
Yes. So the light, as you said with the quote from Kierkegaard, it's really like that. I mean, it's not possible to see the meaning of the life like from the beginning. You only see it afterwards, and it's exactly what happened with this film. That you can get this sort of realization of these things only when you can look like whole life of somebody. When I could see her whole life right from the beginning, right till the end. And then you see, that's it. And there's no less, but there's not more. Like, this is what we have, and this is the best we have.
There's so many touching moments in it, and I want to go back to the feeling of giving it meaning, or giving her life meaning, and what that means. But I'm still. I have to say, I understand this has taken you many years, but is it fair to say that you had a certain amount of luck on the way? I mean, am I correct to understand that the grandmother's house was exhibited, and all of a sudden you had like this access? There was access to her story somehow.
Yeah, that was really that was kind of a turning point in the process of making the film, like from short film to a longer film, because when I found the letters, of course, then I found out so many like really factual stuff, and it wasn't not only guessing anymore. So it really changed the perspective. And yes, I was very lucky. I couldn't believe it that I could actually read a letter written by her like 100 years ago. It was like, how is this possible? Like, how? Like, I mean, how many people do have their letters in museums?
No, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, we were very lucky, but that kind of gave me this feeling like, oh, I must do this film. This was meant to be.
So it was forced on you almost, with all the wonderful material.
Well, kind of, yes, yeah.
and literally, there were no relatives. So when you were doing this, it was your story to tell. There was not a moment where you all of a sudden found that maybe somebody else would have an interest in the story, or no more.
No, not really. I knew she had, for example, postcards from many people, but they were always signed only by first name. So I had no idea how I could find them. And some of the closer friends who also lived in the area, they had died before I found out who they were. And I couldn't find anyone, only the one person at the congregation.
Oh yeah,
kind of knew her. Yeah.
To the funeral, of course.
Yeah.
So with all this material gathered, so it just goes on, and you get more and more, and all of a sudden you have enough material for a full hour. How did you think about structuring it? Can you talk a little bit about the choices you made, about some of the staging elements in it, and the voiceovers? And maybe I'm also, I want to do that first, and I have another question.
Okay. So one of the first things I knew quite early on were the still lives with the things, because first I thought that I only have her things. I didn't know about the letters yet, and I had been thinking like, how could I film them? How would they kind of show everything that I'm feeling because of them? And then I don't know when or where, but I remembered all those still lives from 17th century, and then because also in them they show like the best things people have, but they also have these skulls and dead flowers and things like that are supposed to remind us that everything is just everything is going to pass and nothing is going to last forever. So it had the same theme, and that's one of the first things I knew I was going to use. But at the same time, I knew like it can't be all that sort of structured, because it's kind of dead if it's only that. So at some point, I realized I have to be in the film. If there's nobody to shoot, if the main character is dead, there has to be somebody that is at least moving in the film. So and somebody who you can relate to. So I decided I really have to be in the film. And in editing, we made it even a bit more personal than I had thought of, because it was necessary. And
so that was actually my next question. The parallels you choose to make to your own life, both with a little bit of humor, where you do the same things, but also I'm thinking that the more emotional journey you were on, thinking that somebody could have a full life and still end up dying alone is such a scary notion. And if there was something in mirroring it with your own life that kind of would tell that story clearer somehow.
Yes, it's exactly like that. It was kind of the whole arc of the story is like my emotional journey during the thing, like because it was really interesting, but also really hard for me. I was facing questions that I had never thought about before, and really, kind of also a bit panicked about like how fast time is passing. I won't have time to do anything I always thought I will do, and then kind of to change that idea to the other side, and so, instead of being scared, trying to see the moments we actually have, and kind of enjoy them.
I'm a film consultant, and I have a lot of talks with film directors, and I can sometimes have the feeling that some projects, rich as they are in their opportunity to tell a story, can sometimes be a burden almost. I mean, that they overwhelm you, and sometimes it feels like, oh, do I really have to tell this story? Were there ever moments that you felt like this was a burden? I mean, not just an emotional burden. Well, maybe it is the emotional burden of having to tell her story somehow.
Not really. I kind of, apart from having these difficult feelings, I really enjoyed making this film, and somehow it was easy for me because I could always come back to like, how did I feel when this happened? How was it when this happened? So I could always reflect on myself, and it was kind of easy, and I didn't have to worry about like, how will I be representing somebody, because I was telling all the time that even the way I show Sirkka-Liisa is from my point of view. It must be clear to the audience. So no, it was a really nice. It was really nice to work with this film, but the editing, that was really, really hard. And at that point, we found out there were a lot of like structural problems with the film, and we really had to work a lot with the editing. But in the end, it clicked as it always does.
Thank God for that. Could you elaborate a bit about what were the challenges in the editing?
Well, I had made a really detailed script for this film, and I was kind of thinking like, I've already thought about everything, so we just edit it and it's going to be ready. And well, of course, it didn't work like that. But yeah, it was really hard to give up some of my ideas, and there was some part of the stories that we really just totally cut off. And it's always hard to give up your favorite things. Yeah. But in the end, we realized like it really has to be only about Sirkka-Liisa and me, and nothing else. Nothing else is going to interest the audience like in a narrative way. So we just had to do a lot of talking about what is really the red line of the film. So it just took time. Yeah.
The gift of having a good conversation with a good editor, I guess, is right?
That was really amazing. It was the first time I worked with Okku Nuutilainen, and I loved it. It's so wonderful when there's an editor who really, really wants to think and talk about and really find the essence of the film and really work hard on that. And it was I really enjoyed working with her.
So it was you and Sirkka-Liisa, that was the journey, but you also have a family. And I kept on thinking, I mean, you kind of moved into this woman's life somehow, both physically and emotionally. And how was the journey for your family, or your husband maybe primarily?
Well, he experienced almost the same as me. This is my journey. The film is my journey. I was more obsessed, obviously, but for example, he won't drink his coffee in any other cup than Sirkka-Liisa's little pink cup, and he didn't get quite that deep into her life. There are a lot of relatives that he has never heard of, and I know everybody. But it was also his wish to find out who Sirkka-Liisa was.
and keep her stuff which you have brought with you.
At the moment, some of the things, or a lot of the things, are at the office of the production company. And I've told that, yes, I will get rid of them when, soon. But there are things that are really hard to throw away. I mean, some personal things, and I cannot keep everything, but it's hard to throw away. For example, Sirkka-Liisa had a lot of Bibles. She was a religious person, and she has made all these marks in those Bibles, and it's very personal, and it kind of breaks my heart to throw it in the bin. So I'm just keeping it. It's it's here, and I'm telling everybody, yeah, I will bring them somewhere.
Oh, good for you. It's become a family heirloom. She's part of your family now.
Yeah.
Ever.
And of course, there are a lot of things like those cups and some of the furniture and a lot of things that we are actually using all the time. So it's kind of part of our life.
Exactly. But for me, it was such a touching thing throughout. I mean, in the beginning, it was so clear that somehow the obsession, or whatever you want to call it, was about giving her life meaning. I mean, the feeling that, oh no, she's lived this life and no one will remember her. We have to remember her. I have to do something. But then in the end, I don't know if I interpret this correct, but I had this beautiful notion at the end of the film that the conclusion kind of was, no matter what, her life had meaning. I mean, with or without your film, Sirkka-Liisa's life had meaning. Is that a right interpretation, or?
It is. It's exactly, and that's the kind of thing that I think about when I'm feeling this, panic about time going so fast, and then I think about, everything still has meaning, although nobody might remember it, or the meanings are in these moments. And it's exactly like that. Like, I'm not gonna make her life meaningful. It was already as it was.
It's such a touching film, and it's one of those wonderful examples that makes my documentary heart beat faster than ever, because it's a small story that becomes very big and very general, and it's been a huge job. I'm curious, has it been shown on Finnish television, or has it been?
Not yet.
No.
It just started the theatrical release was on last Friday. It was supposed to be already on March, but coronavirus and everything. So it just opened. So it's now in theaters for some times, and the TV will be later.
So tell me, it's a 1 hour film, and the cinemas choose to show that length of film?
It's combined with the short film, 15-minute short film. It's a combination, and they are actually a really good combination. It's another story of an old lady. So,
well, that's actually very inspiring. I hope people will listen to that, because it tends, in at least where I come from in Denmark, a film needs to be 75, 80 minutes to be considered in a cinema. And a film like this is a good example of the 1 hour form works very well for this film, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we knew that, of course, 70 minutes would be much easier for the distribution, everything, but I cannot make myself do that. It has to be the length that the film actually, is. You cannot make it longer, then it kind of dies. That's the way I think.
So how has the audience received it?
Oh, so well. So well. I've been surprised and so happy. It seems to be that it's for many people it's actually quite touching, and a lot of people come out with tears, and it's been quite amazing. And the best thing I've heard is that some people have said that when they leave home after the film, they actually feel better about their own lives than they did before seeing the film. And that's like wow, that's that's great.
A beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So for me, it was also a bit, as we talked about earlier, for me, it was also a very important thing to think about, that do not make assumptions. I mean, we talk a lot about people dying alone, and it does sound very, very sad. But I will admit, I was crying my eyes out with the last moment where her husband, with the photo album, remember that we had a wonderful life. So people have wonderful lives, even though it might look different in the end. But it's been good, right?
Yeah, and that's actually I really caught myself having this stereotype, like when we moved in and I knew that there was a lady who had died alone and there were no relatives. Automatically I start thinking like, what was wrong with her? What did she do that she was alone? And that's kind of crazy. Why do we think that without knowing anything about people. So at least I've learned that do not make assumptions like that.
Yes, exactly. Elina, thank you very much for giving Sirkka-Liisa's life, not meaning, but giving it a new life. And thank you for sharing it with us. It was really, really nice to talk to you.
It was really nice to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for participating in this Q&A. And I would like to remind people that please remember to vote for the Audience Award. Thank you for watching and listening.